welcome to Tech Talks. My name is Michael Bertoni, and I'm the founder and CEO of Philly Tech. Again, this show is dedicated to entrepreneurs, tech startups, and software company success. We're here to interview great people in the technical field and really talk about how they're changing the world through software. So I'm really excited to be with Joe today, Joe Conley. Joe, it's great to see you. I've known Joe, I actually knew Joe before I started Philly Tech. And we met like about 6 years ago. And Joe eventually got into this great company called Buyside. So Joe, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in tech, and tell the audience about what you're doing there.
Sure. First, thanks for having me. So I've been probably like an individual contributor / full stack engineer for a good 10 years. Worked with a couple different startups, co-founded one, joined another. But it always kind of worked on data analytics, data engineering, kind of scaling data, and starting to get into machine learning more recently as well. So I worked with some great companies in the area. Before I joined Buyside, I was with Chariot Solutions, a great local consulting shop, which everyone has high regard for. But again, just kind of focusing on just data problems, how to scale data, and then how to analyze it and actually leverage it and make good use of it. So in that context, I'd done some individual contributing work for roughly a decade or so, and then helped out with some startups at the founding level and things like that. But then recently, about just under 2 years ago, came across this opportunity at Buyside, and really kind of checked all the boxes for me. Really, it's as far as what they're doing from a data analytics perspective, what they had done, which was awesome, but then where they wanted to go, which was super awesome vision there. And then just a chance to actually lead a team, really kind of build out my own team and kind of, get the right guys in place and guys and gals, and really kind of build out a team with the folks that I wanted. And again, that just speaks to how great of an area the local Philly area is, just as far as tech talent goes. Really kind of just the wealth of talent, both at the junior and senior level. And so I was definitely excited to kind of have that sort of leadership role and kind of shift my focus, not necessarily just shifting it, but kind of my initial focus kind of scaling the data part, and then now trying to focus not only on scaling the data, but actually scaling a team and help them and grow them as future leaders as well.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I mean, so Buyside is a great company, right? Typical software startup, right? Their use case is they help real estate professionals, right? That's the use case. And so it's exciting when someone you're working with gets that. Joe got his dream job. So he was working. He was an individual contributor. Chariot Solutions is a great company. We all know Chariot for people in my audience. Great company. And then you get your dream job as CTO. And so tell us a little bit more about the use case for the product, right? For real estate professionals. Mm-hmm. What does it do? How does it help them?
Absolutely. So it was founded by Charles Williams in 2013. So it's been around for 5 or 6 years now. And Chuck kind of came from a family of third, fourth generation real estate agents. He wasn't an agent himself, but he was involved in kind of flipping houses, and I think he flipped a bunch before the age of 30, something like 15 to 20 different houses before the age of 30, kind of doing it on the side. And he kind of kept running into this problem where obviously if you're doing something that requires that big of an investment, like flipping a house, you really want to know ahead of time, what is the buyer demands? You can go on Zillow or Realtor and know right away, here's the supply side of the equation, the supplier demand, the supply of it, but who are the buyers? Where are they at? And so he kind of kept running into this problem, okay, I can't really articulate the buyers very well. Let me go try to find them. Where are they at? And so he started work with some brokerages like Fox & Roach's local brokerage in the area was one of the first clients. Kind of proved out the use case there as far as working with Fox & Roach to kind of say, hey, give us all your buyers. We can then analyze that data and then actually turn around and make it useful for you as far as reports go and analytics and things like that. So it just kind of gained momentum from there. It was just kind of increasingly just gained adoption through these big brokerages and kind of hit milestones like Douglas Elliman was another big brokerage that they signed in their early history, and just the idea just kind of kept having steam and just really kind of kept hitting that nerve of, okay, I want to know what the buyer demand is, and there's nowhere to get it. So essentially Buyside was going to stake its claim and say, we're going to be the ones to really aggregate it. And part of the challenge there is because no one had really done this before is because it's everywhere, right? I mean, there's buyer signals and data on Zillow, on Realtor.com, all the kind of the third-party portals. There's also vendors that track like open house signage and showing times and things like that. So those are another separate place to get it. And then typically the brokerage has a CRM that they work with that kind of captures all that buyer activity, whether a person goes on the site and saves a search, saves a property, tries to contact an agent. All that signals were kind of just sitting somewhere, but no one had actually thought to, hey, kind of bring all that together and then kind of, give us some nice high-level analytics on top of it. So he was really the first person, and kind of still is really, to kind of really capture all the data, put it in one place, and really make it useful.
Right, so there are a ton of real estate professionals in the Philadelphia region. We all know this. Philadelphia is probably one of the best markets right now because a lot of people from New York, a lot of people from New Jersey, a lot of people from other areas are coming in droves down to Philadelphia because obviously the costs are great. You could build great things for a great cost. So one of the things that's really cool, so when startup starts, you get Fox Roach. Fox Roach, guys, now is Berkshire Hathaway, right? A little bit of a bigger brand, great stuff, right? So explain, what I'm very interested in is the data sources, right? So you're essentially this product, guys, it's getbuyside.com, right? That's how you get to it. For real estate professionals out there, it gives the real estate professional what they need basically to do their job, to make sales, right? To find buyers, things of that nature. But tell the audience a little bit about the data. So what are the typical types of data sources, right? So we'll start there. And then I want to understand from let's tech it out a little bit, from a data engineering perspective, how are you getting that data into the platform?
Sure. So the biggest data source is really the brokerage's CRM, or their own sort of internal tech supplier or tech vendor. So typically, brokerage will take foxandroach.com. Typically a consumer will go on that site and they'll have an account with them, and then they'll do some activity on the site, say search for a listing, set up a save search. So if they have certain neighborhoods or property types or price ranges that they're interested in, that can be kind of quantified as a saved search. So that's kind of one of the main data points that we like to capture. If they see a property they like, they would save it as a favorite. That's another sort of data point that we would capture. If they really like a property, they want to talk to an agent to kind of find out more. That's, again, another data point that we would capture as well. So that's sort of the most, populous sort of data point that we capture from the brokerages. And then in addition, I kind of touched on those third-party data sources. So if a real estate agent brings a client to an open house or a showing, there are third parties that will capture that information, just capture very high-level consumer information, kind of first name, last name, email, and then kind of associate that with the agent. So then we would talk to that separate vendor who sources all that third-party data, and then kind of set up a separate integration on behalf of the brokerage to consume that data as well. So that's sort of the more direct buyer activities, and then we kind of have more of the high-level sort of kind of Google Analytics type data that you'd think about. So that's sort of if anyone is on Zillow.com and views a listing, for example, or any of the kind of consumer portals and things like that, just sort of high-level view stats, share stats, inquiry stats, that sort of thing. So we take both kind of the more direct buyer activities, and then sort of the high-level, just general, might not be as strong a signal, I'm just kind of clicking around, maybe it's not as indicative of true buyer intent, but we capture all of it and then try to organize it and present it in a way that makes the most sense for the agent.
Right, and then, so in terms of the actual data engineering part, right? So you have these data sources, and this gets into your expertise, so you could tell the audience about your core expertise and what you do. But so once you have these data sources set up, and then you got to bring them into your product, then you got to obviously present them on the front end, create a great user experience. So maybe explain to the audience, the types of technology you're using, how you do that within the product.
Great. So that's definitely probably our biggest core competency as far as just the general real estate industry, is our ability to kind of capture all this data, do it well, and then kind of normalize and structure the data in a way to make it useful. So from a pure kind of data engineering perspective, it's technically be considered an ELT platform. So what that means is, I think historically you might have heard the term ETL, which is extract, transfer, load. Typically, if you hear that term, it's more like, just grab the data and then just put it somewhere. Whereas with ELT, it's a bit, the dynamic is a bit shifted, where it's, you grab the data from wherever it is, But before you try to do any sort of transformation, you store it somewhere. So for us, it's AWS. We have a lot of our services in AWS. So we'll store that raw data on S3 before we do anything with it. And that way it's makes it much easier as far as just going through the development cycle, as far as iterating on trying to actually transform this data and flesh out any issues. It's on S3, and just by virtue of being hooked into AWS and S3, there's just a lot of benefits there with these services. With Amazon, as you guys probably know, it's very heavily networked, and once you're in S3, you can then trigger a Lambda, or you can trigger something else. So there's a lot of sort of functionality that you kind of get baked in just by kind of choosing AWS and S3. So then from there, once it's on S3, then we'll take that raw data and then we'll kind of basically transform it and normalize it so it can fit into our database. And from there, we kind of have this normalized view of all these different activities, and then try to tie it back to a specific agent or a specific brokerage. And then that way, if an agent goes into our pro application, they can then see all the buyer activity that was kind of consumed from all these different areas.
Now, in terms of the database, I mean, I assume using a NoSQL database, right?
So we have a couple different data stores. So I think for the more relational type data, we still have relational database using RDS.
Okay.
But for some of the bigger volumes of data where relational doesn't necessarily make the most sense, where we're in that case, we're using kind of more NoSQL technologies. We look at Dynamo and Elasticsearch and things like that, especially where performance is key. Because to a certain extent, you can do some pretty powerful things with an RDBMS, but at the end of the day, especially nowadays with the tooling we have with NoSQL, the use cases just make much more sense for a NoSQL data store.
Great. So everybody, come on back in a few minutes because we're going to talk about the future of this solution, where it's going. So where their product is heading, and also just talk about the future of data in terms of things like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and things like that. So come on back to Tech Talks.
Say we've got grit, and we'll take it as a compliment. Because it's our uncommon drive, our spark within, that brings us together and sets us apart. We are temple made. And when others take shortcuts, when others take breaks, when others take the easy way, we take charge.
Add us on social media to watch bloopers, behind-the-scenes footage, previews, and more.
I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when I'm off the clock, I gotta get stuff done. So when I need a snack, I need something healthy, tasty, and easy to eat. Like wonderful pistachios without the shells. They're protein-powered, delicious, and great on the go. And that's perfect for me. Thanks, Liz. A woman without a lot of time.
Welcome back to Tech Talks. I'm here with Joe Conley. He is the CTO of Buyside. So it's great. So Joe, tell us a little bit about some of the things you're looking for, right? As the CTO of Buyside, what are some of the things you're looking for right now? What are things you're looking for in people and things like that?
So again, we're definitely a growing company. What's nice is we've grown organically to this point, and just based on the pure engagement from our clients and adoption, we've been able to kind of fuel some recent growth as well. So definitely looking to expand our team, probably more on the data side than anything else, just to kind of have more resources to kind of help us analyze the data. So there's I guess there's the data engineering part. We definitely always, I think I'm just constantly recruiting at this point, just kind of keeping an eye out for what possible resources are out there, both local and remote as well. We have a pretty significant remote part of our staff as well. So I'm constantly on the lookout for good data engineering folks. But I think we're definitely starting to transition more into the machine learning and AI part of what we want to do. I think to this point, we've definitely, we have this machine learning algorithm called Percy, which kind of helps us do some analysis, and it's a pretty straightforward. It's nothing super fancy like neural nets or anything yet, but it's just pretty straightforward sort of regression models that can kind of help us do some pretty simple analysis. But I think what we get most excited about is starting to really, one, kind of continue to get more data sources. So that's where the data engineers come in, just trying to consume all this data that's out there. And we still have only kind of scratched the surface because, you know, I kind of mentioned the data sources up until now, but we have additional potential sources of data as well. You know, so anything that kind of reflects potential buyer demand or buyer or seller demand or buyer or seller intent is a potential signal that we could consume and then kind of factor into our per se decision engine. So we're constantly looking for, you know, data engineering resources, potential new data sources that we can consume and kind of help, you know, broaden our modeling capabilities. And then yeah, I think so. That's the data engineering part, sort of the collection and sourcing, and then also the data science part of it as well. We're starting to kind of build out as well, trying to see what models make sense, trying to answer some more interesting questions, you know. So we're definitely at an interesting point where, you know, we've kind of collected a ton of data. Now it's like, okay, let's model it well, and now let's start to do some cool stuff with it.
Yeah. So how do you? One of the questions I'm curious about is in terms of how you develop a product roadmap, right? So you've been there a long time now. You have things you're working on, but how do you develop that product roadmap for Buyside, and where are you taking things? Like, where do you see things going in the future?
Sure. I mean, it's certainly been a challenge just because, you know, we're in this unique position in the industry where we could do literally a dozen different things right now. And so it's always a challenge of like, okay, you know, let's focus on the 1 to 2 to 3 things that really drive home a lot of value for these real estate agents. So as far as kind of building out a roadmap goes, that's kind of always first and foremost in our mind. Like, you know, how are we serving these agents best, and how can our decisions as, you know, having a product manager or myself in a decision-making role, you know, how can we develop this technology to really serve their needs the best? Because there's always that, danger of kind of the, you know, shiny new object syndrome, where, you know, we have all these bunch of cool ML and AI tools. We have all this data. You know, we could do a million different things with it. But at the end of the day, you know, what's really the ROI here? Like, what's really going to drive home value for the agent, keep them happy, keep them engaged, and, you know, keep them, you know, satisfied with our product. So, you know, without getting into, you know, super specifics, you know, at a high level, we're really just trying to really leverage the data and make it more available to the agents. You know, up until this point, they've kind of gotten most of their value out of using our system, you know, coming to get Buyside and their own instance of the application, both on their consumer site and their agent site. I think now we're starting to see, as far as our roadmap goes, more of a transition to, again, kind of playing nice with the agents and where they live. So, for example, we've recently built out our API, again, using some AWS tools like API Gateway and a newer framework called Chalice. We built out this API to help, you know, the agents, third-party vendors consume our data as well. And so now, you know, the agents kind of use their CRMs on a daily basis. You know, instead of going to Buyside to get information about buyer counts and things like that, we can integrate with their CRM, give them an endpoint, and then the CRM has the information they need right away.
Right.
So it's not even like where we're trying to trap them into using Buyside. We really want them to, it's their data. We want to, you know, use their data and leverage it as best we can. And so now we're starting to kind of get more of the data first approach, where, you know, if they just want a simple buyer count on an address, we can give them an endpoint that gets them that right away, and they don't have to go through the trouble of going through a different system. We just kind of, you know, again, we play nice with all these different vendors, and we can kind of give them the data as they need it.
Right. So in terms of your customer, right? So Prudential Fox Roach now is Berkshire Hathaway, right? So is your ideal customer, so, you know, the way I look at the real estate industry, you have like your Remaxes, you have Weichert, you know, you have, you know, there's a company in my office called Compass. I mean, so, but a lot of times these brokers, they're like 1099s, or they're like, they work, you know, they don't get a salary, right, with these companies. So how do you sell? Is it sold at both levels? Is it sold to the major, like the Remax, and then the brokers, or is it one or the other? Like, I'm curious to how that works.
So sometimes it works at the brand level. So like taking Berkshire, you know, we have some agreements at the brand level for Berkshire. So kind of there's some agreements there, but I think most of the time it kind of works at that brokerage level. So where we kind of, you know, we kind of reach out to the brokerage as a whole and kind of show them this functionality, and then it's incumbent on the brokerage then to kind of, you know, roll it out to their agents and kind of work with them to get training and things like that, and selling them on that. That's kind of, you know, as it stands today, but, you know, as we're starting to, you know, scale up our functionality and sort of, you know, work on kind of componentizing a couple things, you know, we certainly could in the short to medium term start to do things on the agent level. But to date, it's currently kind of been at the brand or brokerage level at this point.
Right, so you actually license it, the Berkshire or the Pru, they license it and then they offer it, and as they offer it, I would say usage probably goes up, so then costs go up, I mean at a high level, right? I mean, is that?
So at a high level, right, yeah. So, but we have these nice kind of long-term deals with these clients, and again, we treat everything as a partnership, so it's just kind of, we'll work with them on engagement, we'll work with them on kind of, showing the ROI. We actually show them, like based on their buy-side activity and based on, when certain sides close, we can actually show them the literally to the number of the ROI of using buy-side. So that's
right.
Another tool that we like to use to say, hey, you adopted buy-side 6 months ago, now 6 months later, we can actually show you, the value of the system here.
Right, so everybody out there knows a real estate professional, right? And we're here to help each other, right? So if you know a real estate professional, obviously somebody that can take a look at this technology, maybe show it to their team, right? Or somebody in the real estate markets, right? I mean, this is, let's help Joe, let's help startups, right? We're all trying to get better there. So Joe, let's shift a little bit. I want to talk to you about the future of machine learning and AI, right? So you have a use case, obviously, for data or for real estate professionals, but I'm curious to your opinions on the types of technologies that are out there in terms of AI, where AI, machine learning is going in terms of not only just the real estate industry, maybe you can talk about it from that, but just the overall, because your expertise is in data and these areas. So tell me your thoughts on that.
Sure. So just based on my kind of recent experience, both at Buyside and doing some recent work in the area around big data and machine learning, it's definitely been neat to see sort of the short-term, sort of narrow AI advances. Kind of, again, we have a specific use case. Let's pump a bunch of data at it and model it, and then we can actually get better than human performance. Right. So there's been some great tooling just around sort of narrow use cases. I think what I get most excited about as far as potentially going toward more AGI, artificial general intelligence, is kind of things like how neuroscience might inform potential paths in AI. Because right up until this point, all these narrow use cases, it's more just kind of, more or less complicated pattern recognition. So instead of, typically with a regression model, it's a pretty simple pattern that gets deduced, whereas with a neural net, it's just a very complex multidimensional pattern. So again, it kind of feels, just from my personal experience, that the narrow use cases as far as neural nets go and things like that might have sort of a ceiling or an inherent limitation there. Whereas with sort of general intelligence, general AI, it seems like there's things like that are going on in neuroscience. And Numenta is a company that I follow pretty closely as far as being able to try to really kind of model intelligence intelligently. And not try to think of it as far as like just throwing a bunch of data at it and modeling it and then trying to just get this one use case down. Like actually trying to unpack intelligence kind of from like a first principles perspective and try to understand how the brain works and how the brain operates, and then trying to possibly replicate that in a system that can actually learn. And so that's where I get the most excited, just on a personal level, just the possibilities, what we can learn from neuroscience and how it might advance AGI.
And you said Numenta?
Numenta, I believe, is the name of the company.
And that's a startup that is in this space, and do they offer like a platform to get started or anything like that, or is it, how does that work?
So I'm not sure off the top of my head. I don't know that they're necessarily a startup that has a commercial focus yet. I think they're more of just a research company to this point, and you can look them up online. But I know the founder, Jeff, I think his name is Jeff Hawkins. He had come up with a book called On Intelligence, which I really enjoyed, which I'd highly recommend. And then they have a corresponding YouTube course online, which kind of unpacks the principles there. And so it's kind of taking a different approach to kind of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And so it's something I'm kind of definitely keeping an eye on.
So what, in terms of the different stacks that are out there where people can get started, I mean, I know from other interviews I've done with other people, it's actually pretty easy to get started.
Absolutely.
With testing out some data, doing machine learning, testing out some use cases. What are you seeing out there for any audience where people, just normal people can get started on doing some of these things? Right.
I would definitely recommend the courses on Coursera. I mean, there's a good number of courses on there where even for a layman to come in and just try to at least kind of get the basics down of what these concepts mean and what this terminology means. I think that's just a great start, just from a high level perspective. And then I think there's other courses online where, whether it's Coursera or I think edX is another good site, and some other sites out there like that have these free or paid courses where, typically it's Python. That's the kind of de facto language for machine learning, and I would definitely endorse that as well. We're heavy users of Python at Buyside. But there's just so many resources online where these tutorials can really walk you through just very well the basic concepts, and then reinforce that with either a script or there's another technology called Jupyter Notebooks and Python Notebooks where you can actually step through examples, and just from the convenience of your browser, you don't need to set up an environment. From your browser, you can run these examples and kind of step through code and see how it works. So I think that's definitely a great start, kind of looking at those online courses in those areas. And then from there, you can, I always recommend kind of picking a project. So if there's something you're really interested in that you want to learn machine learning in, just pick a project and really, while you're kind of learning the theory, try to apply it as you're learning it. Because that's really the true test of knowledge is, instead of just sitting in a class and trying to learn something and then just trying to bang it back, actually having a project where you have deadlines or you have milestones and trying to actually implement what you learn kind of really reinforces that learning.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people out there that have use cases, right, that are just normal people that have use cases that could be automated, right, through machine learning. So the thing that's very interesting about sites like Coursera and these guys is they step you actually how to do it, and then they give you the ability to create a project, right? So it's very exciting. So I really appreciate, Joe, you coming in. It's been a great talk, and come back to Tech Talks every Wednesday, 12:30 p.m., where we're going to be interviewing founders, tech startups, people in the media, as well as venture capital. Come back to Tech Talks. Thanks.